Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gina Marie Agderian. I am the author of The Letters in the Old House and The Faceless Woman, both available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. I will have a link to purchase both books in the description below. So today is another episode of Book Talk. If you're new here, this is a series where I talk about a book that I recently read, what I liked, what I didn't like, and ultimately help you determine if you might like to read this book. So today I am talking about Maine Characters by Hannah Orenstein. And I have to say the reason I picked this book up was because of the cover. And I know we're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but like, how cute is this book? And so I did a little bit of digging on this author, and it turns out that this is basically a painting of her family's lake house in Maine, which is where, of course, this book takes place, in Maine. It was a cute book. I'm giving it a 3 out of 5 because there were just some things that did not work for me. I would have probably honestly rated it a little bit lower because there were a lot of things that didn't work for me, but the reason I'm actually giving it a 3 is because of the setting. It does take place in Maine at a lake house. I thought that she did a great job setting the scene of what Maine is like in the summer, even though I've never been to Maine ever. But I really felt like I was there, and you can just tell by the way she writes about Maine and this lake area that she just loves it there. And I thought it was just such a beautiful setting. So this story revolves around two sisters, Vivian Levy and Lucy Webster, who are half sisters who had never met, and they meet at their father's lake house. They have two different mothers, so they meet at their father's lake house after he passes away. Lucy doesn't know, unfortunately, that her father had passed, but Vivian, who was raised by her father, knows that he did pass. And Lucy really didn't get a lot of time with her father, not nearly as much as Vivian, because Lucy lived in Maine and grew up in Maine, while Vivian grew up in New York City with her mother and her father in the same home. And so they meet and they're opposites. Lucy is very locally Maine, and Vivian is very New York. She's a sommelier, so very into wine and very, very New York. And Lucy is not. So they ultimately are arguing back and forth about what to do about their father's house. Vivian wants to sell it. She needs the money. Lucy does not want to sell it, even though she does need the money. And it's just this whole push and pull. And they kind of describe it as like the parent trap, like a grown-up parent trap. That's what Joe Piazza had said on the back of this. And it's kind of Parent Trap-ish, maybe with the summer and maybe with the sisters and being in like a woodsy setting, but I don't necessarily feel that this, or agree that this was anything like The Parent Trap at all. Some parts of this story that really kind of drove me nuts was, number one, these women are supposed to be in their like early 30s. They are extremely immature for being in their early 30s. They sound like 12 or 13-year-olds bickering back and forth with each other and just unable to be civil and professional with one another. And they're both professionals. Lucy's a teacher, and Vivian works at a high-end restaurant as a sommelier. So they act like spoiled brats, and the characters, unfortunately, are extremely unlikable in the story, in my opinion anyway. I did feel also that they were both extremely whiny in their own ways. Vivian whining about the guy that she's seeing, which is a whole other separate thing, which I'm not going to spoil, of course, because this is a spoiler-free review. And then Lucy whining about how Vivian grew up in a wealthy household, and that, you know, she has so much privilege and blah, blah, blah. And it's literally mentioned almost every time that Lucy talks to Vivian is, well, at least you had this and at least you had that. And it just got so old and so tiring because that basically became Lucy's entire personality. And it kind of sucked because at first I really liked Lucy's character in the beginning. I really felt sorry for her. I really felt for her. And then the more she whined, the more I just really didn't like her, did not like Vivian. So it's an okay read. I feel like you shouldn't necessarily avoid it. Some other people might connect to this better than I did. I've said this in other videos, but I think I sometimes have trouble connecting to sibling stories or stories that center around siblings because I don't have any siblings. So sometimes that connection's a little hard for me. So if you have maybe a strained relationship with a sibling or just a sibling, you may find this book a little bit easier to connect with. But I just, looking at it objectively, I just found both sisters to be very annoying, very whiny, and just not very likable characters. And that, I think if they were more likable, I would have enjoyed this book more and would have given it a higher rating. But props to the author for really creating a beautiful setting and really making you feel like you are in Maine. That was definitely a plus for this book. So Maine Characters by Hannah Orenstein. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book or if you plan to read this book. And as always, guys, happy reading.